The Isekai or otherworld genre of anime is, it's something. The stories where a young character suddenly appears in some kind of fantasy world has been around since the early 80s, but it's no secret that the genre has become somewhat pulverizing with the inception of Sword Art Online back in 2012. In spite of the quantity of isekai anime having been somewhat low, I mean we've gotten approximately 3 shows a year since Sword Art Online, which is absolutely nothing compared to high school shows or even idol shows, the genre still appears to be everywhere, no matter where you look. Sword Art Online kinda speaks for itself. I mean, whether you like it or not, then that dumpster fire is one of the most popular staples in anime this decade, which is, you know, something. After that we got Log Horizon, No Game No Life, and that one dungeon show that I think was something at some point. And just when we thought that there couldn't be thrown even more fuel on the fire, Re:Zero punched its way through all of them. On top of that, we've already gotten shows like Hataraku Mao-sama and Maid Dragon, which has subverted the genre, and Konosuba, which has satirized it. It may not be the most popular or prevalent genre in all of anime, but it sure is treating itself in that way, and maybe that's enough. You've probably guessed that I'm not the biggest fan of the isekai genre. However, that is solely based on the fact that I don't think the genre is being taken as seriously as it should be. The idea of a character finding themselves in another world is, well, incredible and has been the premise of several classics in literature. But for whatever reason, though genre feels more stagnant and decayed when it comes to anime. We've gotten used to the boring protagonist appearing in an uninteresting medieval fantasy world derived of, well, fantasy. At this point, it seems that instead of going back to the basics and ask what makes the premise thrive, most writers are just satisfied with coming up with a new gimmick. Just slap a smartphone into the mix and get that bad boy into production. Well, since no one in the industry appears to want to look back, I guess I'll have to. And that's actually quite easy considering the fact that one of my favorite anime of all time is, you guessed it, an isekai. Escaflowne is absolutely spectacular. Beautifully hand-drawn animation accompanied with a grand score and exhilarating storytelling. It's got a vast and gorgeous world and is truly worthy of being called an epic, even if that word is a bit overused today. On top of that, with all of its spectacle, twists and turns, it still manages to produce compelling and dense characters, giving us plenty of mellow and enjoyable character moments. Oh, and it's totally got a stunningly hand-drawn mecha that transforms into a dragon. A fucking dragon, dude. As you can tell, this is not going to be a fair video if I just straight up compare the new isekai anime to Escaflowne. That is just gonna result in me giving a lot of generic praise to one while mindlessly bashing the other. Fact is, I don't need every isekai anime to be as good as Escaflowne. But I do ask myself, what is the one thing that continuously falls flat in contemporary isekai that at the same time works in spades in Escaflowne? Well, the answer to that is simple. I believe that you can make a decent anime with a generic soundtrack or an unimpressive world, mediocre visuals, and even a somewhat forgettable cast of characters. But you cannot make it work without a proper main character. The protagonist in the isekai genre is the one thing that carries over from the world we know into the new one. They are the ones we sympathize with and the ones we are following almost throughout the entire series. So let's try locking onto that. As the main character of Escaflowne, Hitsume isn't defined by any given stereo or archetype. It's not that you can't place her in some kind of box, like her being a schoolgirl, but she isn't defined by that information. Everything we need to know about her personality is conveyed to us throughout the show. Alone from the first episode, we learned that she is well liked because people are calling out her name as she is running to practice. She's a pertinacious student, maybe a bit too much, as shown by her coming late to practice because of her studying. She is outspoken and courageous, as seen by the way she is talking about herself to the boy she likes, and the way she decides to approach and confess to him instead of letting the chance slip by. She is cautious and can get frightened without being obnoxiously whiny, as well as caring of her friends, as seen by her reaction to the dragon appearing and attacking. She is responsible, impulsive and brave, as seen by her helping Vaughn fighting the dragon off once she realizes that she can help. Lastly, we see her expressing fright and reservation when she realizes that she is in a new world. Before she is even entering the new world, we get a clear understanding of who she is and what kind of values she is supposed to represent. It's not that we necessarily need to relate to her, but we do need to understand her and want to keep following her, and that we do. This way of handling the main character is not the case with the protagonists in most contemporary isekai anime. In fact, a whole lot of them are strictly defined by their archetype. The best and most annoying example is the way most isekai protagonists appear to never give much thought about the world that they have left behind, simply because that they're in some way, shape or form tired of the world that they have come from. You know how it goes. Our character finds themselves in another world in the first episode, and in spite of some slight confusion, they quickly accept the fact that they're going to be living in the new world from that moment. Rarely do we see these main characters reminisce about their family, their friends, their pets, their things or places, and most of the time it's because of some vague reason like, oh, they're just a lonely shut-in. It creates a breach between us, the viewers, and the protagonist that they react so unrealistically. They're portrayed as just common everyday teenagers, yet they act like emotionless zombies when they're supposed to at least be a little bit sad about their predicament. I don't care about how much of a shut-in you are or how much you dislike the world you are raised in. If you one day find yourself in a fantasy world with a risk of never seeing any of your loved ones ever again, you're going to be having a bad time with it. Actually, the whole things just kinda seem illogical to me. I mean, if you're a shut-in, you know, someone who really sits at their computer all the time, plays games and sleeps a lot, would it really be so ideal to suddenly have none of those things around and instead you have to begin walking around some medieval-esque fantasy world? I don't know, I just feel like the whole logic behind this person really likes playing video games, so of course they would love being in a video game, just seems kind of flawed, honestly. I mean, I once had fun playing Ori and the Blind Forest, and that doesn't mean I want to be stuck in a cursed world where everything wants to kill me. It's fine to have characters fulfill a certain archetype, but you can't let that archetype command their personality. I think a great character to compare with here is Sato from Welcome to the NHK. Sato is also a need, a shut-in, and a hikikomori, but the show never tries to just have him do or act in a certain way just because of that label. Welcome to the NHK shows us how and why Sato's ended up in the situation he is in, which allows us to sympathize with him. The idea of using a stereotype as a way of not digging into the behavior of characters is cheap to me, but that doesn't mean it can never work. It can be incredibly effective with supportive characters that are not supposed to play a big part in the story that they are in. But we are not talking about supporting characters here, we are talking about the protagonist, the main character, the one with most, if not all, screen time dedicated to them. The character who at the same time is supposed to be our window into the anime, as well as a compelling person we want to follow. When we look at the protagonists of these shows, we also get a glimpse of the themes that they're portraying. The ones from most isekai shows are all about escapism and the idea that if the world you live in sucks, you can just go to another one created just for you, littered with people being overly amazed by how incredible you are, because you're just so damn special. Hitomi is pretty much the antithesis to that. She is not escaping to Gaia, she is stuck there, and her character is expressing a perfect perfect balance between longing for home and allowing herself to take in the new world she is in. In that sense, Escaflowne is not about escapism or glorification of being a slob, but about embracing the situation you're in and knowing what is important. It speaks to human values and not just a very small otaku demographic. I'm certain the isekai genre is going to continue strong for years to come, and I'm sure we'll get examples of interesting visuals, music, or gimmicks. But if you actually want me to care, then the least you can do is try to create an interesting or a compelling main character who I actually want to follow throughout this new world. Or, you know, make a badass mechanite dragon hybrid. I mean, that's pretty cool too.